Okay, let's go to the principle of checks and balances. Okay, the principle of check and balances is also another exception of the principle of separation of powers. It is because one department is allowed to resist the encroachment upon its prerogative or to rectify mistakes or excesses committed by other department. Okay, let me just explain first what do you mean by encroachment. You must understand this term as early as now because it will be used in other topics. Okay, so imagine three circles representing the three department. Um, Assuming class had that there is no blending of powers, the principle of blending of powers does not apply. Um, Assuming that there is no blending of powers, si executive department nang hilabot siya ni legislative department. Mura siya cross class ba? Let's say um, si president mismo ang propose og law inana or something ihataw or his alter ego uh, ning propose og bill, no? Of course, the proposal of a bill should come from the legislative department. Kung manghilabot si executive department or mo cross siya class, there is an encroachment of function or power. That's what you mean by encroachment. Um, and the enactment of a law belongs to the sole prerogative of the legislative department because mo man na iyang function. Um, okay, let's read again the definition of check and balances. It is an exception to the principle of separation of power because one department is allowed to resist the encroachment upon its prerogative or to rectify mistakes or excesses committed by other department. So, number two class, it is allowed to rectify, the principle of check of balances is allowed for the purpose of that one department may rectify or correct the mistakes or excesses committed by other department. There may be encroachment of function class but there can also be an excess committed by the department. What do you mean by excess? Hinglapas siya sa iyang own function, no? Um, nagpalabi si department sa iyang function class ba? That is not already allowed, no? So essentially the principle of check and balances is allowed for each department to check up on one department kung sakto pa ba ilang ginabuhat or wala ba sila hinglapas, no, or to correct any mistake that department has committed. Okay, for you to understand better, let us cite some examples. Example 1. The lawmaking power of Congress is checked by the President through his veto power, which in turn may be overridden by the legislature. Okay, when you reach your Philippine legislative subject, we will discuss on the topic on how a bill becomes a law. So there is a process and a class. So, but we know that a bill starts in the House of Representatives. So, there must be someone from the House of Representatives who must propose the bill. So, naging ay proposal class. And after nga makapasar siya sa House class, mo proceed na siya sa Senate, sa upper house. And again, mag-votation na siya. There is, depending on the law, 2/3 or majority. Wait, I'm getting dizzy. So, from Senate class, I mentioned before nga, if makapasar siya ni Senate, mo proceed na siya, isubmit na siya ni Congress. ni President, sorry. Isabit na siya ni President, no? Kaya nakapasar naman siya ni Congress, ni both House of Rep and Senate. So, pagpasa niya dito ni President, if si President dili siya ganahan sa law or dili siya agreeable with the law, then he has the power to veto. What do you mean by veto? Di niya isugot, magbabagan niya ang law class. So, he will not sign it and he will return the law back to Congress so that Congress may amend the law or amend the bill because it's not yet a law, no? Amend the bill or they can choose to override it. There is a requirement also nga pwede ma-override nila ang veto power ni President. So, if di sila ganahan, if magtuman sila class ba nga ipapasa ang bill, then they can override it. And there is also a requirement for that. But, essentially, mo na ang check and balances. In a way, pagpasa ni Congress to President, nga si President, hing-check siya sa law nga gipasa ni Congress. Wa niya sugti. Mura siya hing-check siya sa law. But katupong pagpasa ni President back to Congress, kay wala hing-agree si Congress nga sa veto ni President, in a way, kay magtuman man sila, mag-override sila class ba, that is not bad if really Congress believes that it is a good law. So, in a way, si Congress po, hing-check po siya sa veto power ni President. Nasabtan na ba, class? So, mura siya, na-balance siya, class ba, kay si President, hing-check siya ni Congress, niya si Congress, hing-check siya sa veto power ni President. I hope you get the illustration. Okay na ba ito, class? Nasabtan na ba, class? That is the principle of check and balances. So, each department will check up on the other para there is balance, okay? There is balance of power. Okay, another illustration. If wala mo kasabot, class, i-rewind na lang niya, i-replay. Or just PM me. Another example is when the Congress may refuse to give its concurrence to an amnesty proclaimed by the President. So, previously, I mentioned nga si President has the power to grant amnesty to a certain convicted criminal. And for that to happen, there must be an agreement or a concurrence by majority of the members of Congress. So if walay concurrence by the majority of the members of Congress, then walay amnesty. So in a way, kung di mo sugot si Congress nga mo grant og amnesty si President, then in a way si Congress nagbantay siya sa decision making ni President. There is a check and balance, okay? There is a check and balance of power. Another example is when the Senate